The Buffalo Bills once again are entering the 2025 free agency, wondering how they can get over the hump, make it to the Super Bowl, and contend for a Lombardi trophy. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and today we are breaking down our first ever mock free agency for the Buffalo Bills in the 2025 offseason. Before we get into that, if you like the content that we put out and you want to help the channel grow, the easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when new videos come out. And while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Bills do this free agency season. And Ryan, that being said, let's pull up their list here on Over the Cap. And real quick, too, also, this is our first time doing this. So any tips or tricks on kind of how we go about this would be greatly appreciated. But luckily for the Bills, not really too many free agents. And I think several of these free agents are going to be guys that are completely like you could take them or leave them. Matt Collins, Mark
Yeah.
Cooper for me are the same guys. I think Matt Collins one is hilarious. I think he really fits into the vibe of Buffalo outside of the fact that he doesn't like wearing shoes. I think, I don't know. I've been to Buffalo once. It was in the summertime. I still wore shoes. I'm going to assume in the wintertime, it's probably best to wear shoes, but Matt Collins disagrees. But then even to some other guys who like some defensive tackle like Austin Johnson, Quentin Jefferson, some of these like rotational guys, Jordan Phillips as well. I think these guys could be interchangeable. I mean, you maybe give them a
Yeah.
couple bucks, and like we'll talk about it here in the second in the calculator. But to me, I do think that the secondary was a major issue for this team down the stretch. And what do you end up doing with Damar Hamlin, Rasul Douglas? Both guys, of course, I know it's just PFF. Statistically, we're one of the worst in their respective positions. And I also think too, there's some you could back up some of that on film also too. So, but still, but that being said, though, they are picking 30th. How are you going to address it in the draft? They do have a lot of picks. Ryan, as a Patriots fan here, what are some of the names that scare you the most that you don't want to see on the Bills roster next year when you look at this free agency class?
I mean, to be fair, none of these names really scare me. Like in that sense. I mean, I think that they'll throw some small contracts at these guys, and that will like we'll get into that here in a second, like you said. But to me, these are like the supporting cast members. For me, it's really going to come down to the Bills setting themselves up to just take the best player available in the draft. Fill some of the like more immediate holes. Don't let yourself have to play Kyer Elam for 90% of the
Yeah.
snaps in the AFC Championship game. Like I say that half joking, but like it's it's those types of decisions that like you might sign a corner here in a minute for $2.5 million. You might sign a few safeties for similar contracts, but like again, those that could be the difference between Kyer Elam having 3 penalties and 4 catches allowed, or and you go into the Super Bowl instead of Kansas City. Like, and
Yeah.
so I think that's going to be the most important thing here for the Bills is just finding guys that can come in and play a role. You have the stars already. You have your Josh Allen. You have James Cook. Khalil Shakir has become a little bit of a star. Ed Oliver on the defensive end is their star. So Toronto. Oh crap! What's the corner? Teron. It's not Teron Armstead. That's the tackle.
Teron Johnson, and then also
Teron
another
Johnson.
guy
Yeah.
too,
Christian Benford has been
Christian
playing
Benford as
well.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they have other solid players on the defensive end, and Sean McDermott always has that defense playing well. So they really just need to again find guys to come in and play their role. And so let's just kind of get into what we did for the
Yeah.
Bills here.
And
And so
I
we'll
think quick point of context too, currently as of right now, before we did all this, Bills are sitting at negative 10 million in cap. So
yeah.
so $10 million over the cap. So we're trying to figure out how to get to where they can get to a point where they can spend a little bit of money.
Yeah, well, where we are right now. And so the big thing that we did was we did pull some money out of Josh Allen's contract, Ed Oliver's contract, and Dawson Knox's contract. I believe we pulled 10 million out of Josh Allen's contract in a restructure, 5 million out of Ed Oliver and Dawson Knox's contract in a restructure there as well. So that gave us about 20 million extra in cap space to spend. The other things that we did was we did release Von Miller and Matt Milano with post June 1st cuts. That freed up probably about another 26 million, 26,
27-ish.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah. in cap space. And so again, I think that put us at about 40 something million before we went and made these moves here with some of the re-signings going into this offseason. So I don't believe there were any other moves. Once we got down here, these were some of the lower level roster guys, or like guys on rookie contracts that are not getting cut, or like you kind of cut these guys and then replace them with other guys with similar contracts. So we just didn't want to worry about that. It's kind of a tit for tat situation. So, moving on to the guys that we re-signed, did bring back Matt Collins on a pretty small contract. I believe it was a 1 or 2 year deal for 2.5 or 5 million. But at
Mhm.
2.5 average annual value, just again, he's a 32-year-old receiver. But with that being said, he did play a role in being that wide receiver 3 or 4 on this team where and he was making impacts in the AFC Championship game. And so I think he earned himself another go around with this Buffalo team.
Yeah, yeah, and so Matt Collins is a guy. To me, it's like between him or Amari Cooper. Like I think they're kind of one in the same, where they're that outside X receiver. And Matt Collins, I think he's got one. He's much cheaper, and Keon Coleman's going to eventually is. They drafted him to be the main guy, so you keep him up there. I think it, and he provides a still a good amount of production for what you're paying him. And then when it came to the secondary, the other side of the ball, we ended up keeping DeMar Hamlin on a similar type deal. This, once again, similar to receiver, does not mean that you can't go out and go and re-sign somebody else externally through free agency or address this position in the draft. DeMar Hamlin, obviously, I think is a fan favorite throughout the entire NFL because of his story. But I also think too, there's still some continuity there, and maybe he can continue to kind of keep on develop, even though I know he's 27, but still for such a cheap contract, I think you'd rather
Yeah.
keep him here and then try and go and get a lockdown corner, uh, either through the free agency, depending on which route you want to go, or develop guys through the draft, which is what it seems like the Bills historically would rather do.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think again, you kind of mentioned the story of him being there, and he played in some meaningful snaps for them as more of like a rotational safety behind Taylor Rapp and some of the other guys there. But no, he's can provide some quality snaps. Not he's just not a full-time starter, but you're not paying him to be a full-time starter. And
Yeah,
then lastly, Austin Johnson, the defensive lineman, just keeping one of those veterans in this rotation, like Jordan Phillips, and who is the other one? Quentin
Quinton
Jefferson.
Jefferson, yeah, Dwayne
Like
Smoot also too.
yeah, those guys are a little bit older, although Dwayne Smoot is a year younger, but keeping Austin Johnson had a higher snap count. And so I do feel like that he's going to be a good re-sign just to keep
Exactly.
some consistency in that interior defensive line. So,
And
uh,
and that's one too as well. If you don't like Austin Johnson there, but you want to keep another one of the defense tackles, it's just a plug and
yeah,
play kind of guy as well. Because I think one of the things the Bills are going to do is they have 4, 6, 8, 10 picks, and knowing the Bills, wouldn't be surprised if they trade back on a couple of picks as well. This is going to be the defensive line class that you really want to hone in on a couple of young pieces, get them on some rookie contracts that you can really utilize to help keep growing, because there's going to be a lot of good defensive rookies that can come in and help out this team from the get go. And so those were the main ones that we kind of have stuck with here for re-signing. Maybe you can make arguments
yeah,
for some other guys as well. Jordan Phillips is actually another guy too that I've got that's on the defensive line that we didn't end up signing. But
yeah,
and Ryan, it's kind of one of the things too is like we kind of discussed this before because we kind of pre-prepped like who are some of the guys they'd want to go and target. And there's really kind of two types of strategies for the Bills. It's just like try and just go get some seasoned veterans, and fill up some spots, and then really hone in on the draft and get young talent to
yeah.
develop them. Or with $31 million so that you have in cap space, what's one big player that you want to go and try and get? And we discussed it, but and I think you had a great point too about like go get these veteran guys and try and spread out your wealth across multiple different positions that you need help in.
Yeah, and to me, I think that's going to be the way to go. Again, we kind of talked about it at the beginning of the video. Like you have your stars, you just need guys to come in and play their role and do what they need to do, and then hopefully you have enough attrition at the end of the season that, and not to like sound like a broken record, but that Kyer Elam is not having to guard Xavier Worthy in the AFC Championship game,
Exactly.
getting penalties and giving up catches. So I do feel like there are some good veterans that are going to be available on some inexpensive contracts. And let's start with the wide receiver position. This is not a top heavy wide receiver class, but I think when you look at some of the names that are in this class, I do think that there is some value to be had. And one of those guys is Brandon Cooks. So Amari Cooper is not going to be re-signed in this mock draft, but Brandon Cooks can play a similar role of that veteran receiver. I think last year, or maybe it was one of the years in Houston, was like one of 2 seasons he's had less than 1,000 yards receiving. And so if you go, I think 2 years, $11 million is pretty fair, and you can adjust the cap however you want, whether you want to make next year kind of a void year or maybe front load the cap a little bit or kind of finagle it. I think that is up to you, but I think $5.5 million for a guy that's going to come in and give some explosiveness down the field in a different way than Keon Coleman and really be a field stretcher for this offense, I think is going to be really important. Give Khalil Shakir more room underneath to kind of run those juke routes and run those quick slants over the middle to get some of those yards. You have the 2 tight ends. And again, Brandon Cooks, he may not be 1,000-yard receiver anymore, but he can still run the go ball. He can still run those deep developing routes and hit those big plays for this Buffalo Bills team.
Well, and exactly too is kind of what your point was. Like when kind of going down this veteran route, though, he's a great complement to the young receiver stars that you're
Mhm.
building with Keon Coleman, with Khalil Shakur, and even to I'll throw in Dalton Kincaid in there as well. Very similar, I would say, to kind of the support that Matt Collins brings. Matt Collins is a totally different way, but it's still similar type of report. And I think it's something similar as well could be said for the next one is like so like you're losing some receivers as well, and we apply that also to the linebacking position as well. And so like you move on from Matt Milano for financial reasons, also too for playability reasons, and I think you go get a guy who's a solid player as well, and Tyrell Dodson from Miami. And so I'm bringing him here. One, it's always good, Ryan. You talk about it the Patriot way, try and take you the best players from your division rivals. But here, though, I think one of the areas as well too that was just inconsistent from the Bills' defense was just the linebacking play, but it's because of inconsistency of availability overall from guys like Matt Milano not being able to be there. And so, Ryan, with Tyrell Dodson now coming into this defense, what do you think that he would be able to bring also? And do you see some similarities to him and Matt Milano?
Yeah, I see some. I mean, he's a really solid linebacker. He can play in coverage. He helps against the run well. He's just like a good player, and y- you can never go wrong, in my opinion, just signing or drafting a good player. And again, this isn't like if like you really like Jahad Campbell or you really like Barrett Carter or one of the other linebackers in this draft class. I don't think that this signing necessarily prevents you from doing that. This just sets a pretty high floor, I feel like, for your linebacker room, especially when you have to move on from a veteran like Matt Milano. You come back and you still have a younger but still veteran presence in your linebacker room. And so I feel like he's a solid player that can come in and give them a lot of quality snaps at linebacker.
Exactly. Yeah. And so another route then too as well. So a lot of guys on the defensive line ended up moving on, and once again, too similar, I would say, to kind of like if you don't like Austin Johnson, you can replace them like with Quinn Jefferson if he provides more value. And I think the same could be kind of said from this, but the Bills were wanting to go out and kind of like spread their money around. A guy like Sebastian Joseph Day, I also think would be something similar as well to what they have, that defensive tackle rotational piece. And so ha- adding him in there into the Sean McDermott's defense, or once again, too, if you don't like that, like then just re-sign one of the current players that's a free agent that would cost about the same amount of money and would be in a very similar type of role is the route to go. I think he would gladly take $30 million there
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on that time. I think he would.
Be the
I think
highest paid defensive lineman in the
he would head
league.
up to Buffalo right now.
Yeah, yeah. So no, and I feel like that's another good signing there. Again, just wanting to kind of keep that defensive line rotation fresh with Ed Oliver and Austin Johnson and company. So especially without Von Miller being on the edge, that defensive interior might be under a little bit more pressure than normal to produce. So making sure they stay fresh is going to be really important. And I guess the last addition here that we'll do of external free agents, it's not technically the last, but it's the last official one, is like we'll go ahead and kind of address the secondary here because I've been joking about Kyer Elam, I feel like this whole video, but I do feel like going and adding a veteran corner in free agency is going to be pretty important. Just because this is not the greatest corner draft class. There are a few good guys up top, like Travis Hunter and Will Johnson. And then you have a few guys, I think, at the back end of the first round, like Siobhan Ravel, Jade Barron, maybe Trey Amos, if that's your style of corner. And I do feel like after that, there's a pretty big drop off. So going and getting a guy like Emmanuel Mosley, I think is going to be pretty important for a team like the Bills, who can, just come in, give you some veteran snaps at corner, and it'll be serviceable. He's not going to be the world's greatest. He's not going to be Sauce Gardner or Patrick Surtain, but he'll be somebody that can come in and you can sign him to a relatively inexpensive deal. I think over 3 years here, and just like you can work with it. You can also load it so there's no guarantees after the first year or second year, and just make sure that he's that your corner play can only go so low. And I think that'll be really important for them this offseason.
Yeah. Well, and once again, it kind of goes back to that philosophy. I think that they're going to do is like bring in veteran players here, and it's almost like you see teams do this when they're going through a rebuild, and the Bills are most definitely not going through a rebuild, but they're
Mhm.
definitely going to take the strategy of like what are some veteran players that can come in now, and then with all these draft picks that we're going to have, and I'm going to even guess too, they're going to probably have more than 10. I bet they trade back. That's typically kind of what the Bills have done. And wouldn't
Mhm.
be surprised if they end up with 12 draft picks and they can really focus on finding some quality players that fit their defensive scheme. But so these guys come in now, and then you bring in that competition and really see like who rises to the top and who rises to the occasion in training camp, and can really get the best out of both these old and young guys. And so that's kind of one of the things then too as well. The last position that because we have a couple million left, we want to try and get to 15 million or so left
Yeah.
in cap space, just so they have availability to sign their draft picks and then also to like any in-season potential moves that they want to have. But safety is another position as well. As to know, like you signed Damar Hamlin to a very cheap deal, which does not mean that you can that you could just avoid that position the rest of the way. And so, Ryan, who are some of the other top names as well in that safety positions that
Yeah.
you think they could go after?
A few other guys that I felt like fit this like $3 to $4 million a year range. You could get Cameron Bynum from the Vikings. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. You can get Von Bell. I think he's actually back with the Bengals now. And then Mike Edwards is going to be a free agent from Tampa Bay. He struggled a little bit with injuries in his career, but I do feel like for $3 to $4 million, that would be worth the risk for the Bills. So I'm really interested to kind of see what the Bills do. They have to go through. I think they're going to have to make some tough cuts this off season to kind of clear up this cap space. But just kind of going forward for them, if they can go out and sign some of these veteran players to these smallish contracts, I feel like that's going to be what's best for their team because it'll raise the floor of their play while still allowing Josh Allen to go out and be Superman. They'll have Joe Brady for probably only the next season, and then he'll go be a head coach somewhere. And so I feel like going and doing it this way is going to be what's best for them, and just signing a bunch of high floor veteran players.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of non-committal, like long-term contracts,
Yeah,
as well as you go into trying to find this good young talent. And there's definitely been some picks that they've hit on as well, that they're going to be building around. And
yeah,
so I could see them doing that here in this class, especially too on the defensive side of the ball. With all the picks that they have here, I could see it like maybe not next year, but like maybe 2026 having one of the top defenses in the league the way Sean McDermott can coach it up, and the
yeah,
rise, of oh shoot, I want to say it's Christian Benford, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Christian
yeah,
Benford.
yeah. Christian Benford, I I think can be one of those cornerbacks that can kind of turn into that lockdown cornerback. He had a great season last year. Taron Johnson maybe can keep on improving as that nickel corner. As Christian Benford's only been in the league for 3 years now, and Taron Johnson, he's been in the league for a little bit, but
Yeah, I think
uh,
6, 7
um,
years.
yeah, but still a solid nickel corner. So
Mhm.
it's going to be fun. The AFC East as a division is wild, just how opposite all these teams are. Like the Patriots have all this money. The Jets are going through a coaching change. The Dolphins, who knows what's going on with their
Yeah.
roster. And then the Bills don't really have much cap space, but also don't really have too many guys that they really need to replace. It's just how do you just improve on the positions that you're currently at. So it'll be fascinating to see how the Bills approach this offseason.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing it. The Bills are one of those teams, like, I remember they were like 30 million under or over the cap one year, and that was the year they signed Von Miller to that big contract. And I was like, I don't know how they're gonna actually
Yeah.
afford this contract, but they ended up figuring out a way. So we'll see. Let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Bills mock free agency. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.